Hello, I'm Tamara Banks, and welcome to Denver Decides. This community partnership is dedicated to accessible and transparent elections. The partnership includes the League of Women Voters of Denver, Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, Historic Denver, and is presented by Denver 8 TV. Today we are presenting a candidate forum in anticipation of the municipal election coming up on Tuesday, May 7th. Among other offices, this election includes the candidates vying to represent District 1 as a member of Denver City Council. District 1 encompasses parts of Central and North Denver, from roughly Sheridan Boulevard on the west to Zuni Street on the east, from 52nd Avenue on the north to 12th Avenue on the south. Now, our format is a pretty standard one. The candidates will have timed opening and closing statements. The opening statements will be followed by rounds of questions that have been submitted by the organizers of this forum and possibly from you in the audience. Since we do have a time limit, we may not be able to get to all of the audience's questions submitted. All of the candidates will answer all of the questions, and all of their responses will be timed. Our timers are right out front where our candidates can see them. Thank you so much for being here, for your help. So let's begin by meeting the candidates vying to represent District 1 as your next City Council member. And please hold your applause until all the candidates have been introduced. The candidates are seated right to left, facing the audience in order that their names appear on the ballot in May. So, beginning at my right, we'll start with
Praj Kulkarni.
Victoria Aguilar.
Sabrina Diagosta.
David Cebedos.
Mike Soma.
Amanda Sandoval.
And Scott Dura.
Let's give them all a big round of applause. Thank you for being here. That was the toughest part of the forum. We'll begin with 1-minute opening statements from each of our 7 candidates. We will proceed in ballot order with these statements. So once again, at my right, we'll start with Praj. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Hi, I'm Praj. Thanks for having me tonight. I've lived all over. I grew up in the Caribbean. I've lived on the East Coast, the West Coast, and for the past 6 years, Northwest Denver. I'm running to ensure that Denver doesn't turn into a replica of the Bay Area, the place I lived right before coming here. A place where families that make almost $120,000 a year qualify for low-income housing. A place where teachers have to live almost 2 hours away from the schools in which they teach. I believe Denver doesn't have to turn into that nightmare. But to do so, we're going to have to build more homes, more than anything else. More homes of all shapes and sizes for all 4 neighbors. Our neighborhoods should welcome all types of diversity, socioeconomic, racial, gender, and diversity in the types of homes. And when we do so, all 4 neighbors will have access to good schools, local businesses, and parks. All 4 neighbors will benefit from our growing economy. That's my vision for Denver. That's my vision for District 1. Again, my name is Praj. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from Victoria.
Hi, everybody. My name is Victoria Aguilar. I'm a District 1 native. I was born and raised in the Sunnyside neighborhood and have lived there my entire life. I was born to a working-class family. My father immigrated here, and my mother is a third-generation Denverite. The earliest memories that I have are my family providing English classes to our new American neighbors in this district, and always just being in a family that uplifts our community, that invests into our community. For the past 10 years, I've worked at Denver Human Services, serving Denver's most marginalized populations, making sure that people have access to city services, and I've experienced firsthand the policies that impact our families in our district. I've also experienced, just like many of you, the rapid growth in our district. And so that's why I'm running for City Council, to ensure that we have a voice on City Council, to ensure that we have a leader who puts people first before profits. And that's who I am.
All right, thank you. And next, Sabrina Diagosta.
Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Sabrina Diagosta, and I am a 7th-generation Denverite. I'm raising my children here just like my grandparents did over 50 years ago. I bought my house in Northwest Denver about 18 years ago, and since then I have volunteered serving homeless and at-risk youth in our community and supporting our neighborhood schools. I have 20 years of experience working in government policy and communications, including in the Denver Mayor's office, where I worked hand in hand with the City Council council, our city departments, and most importantly, our community to solve some of Denver's most complex problems, from affordable housing and homelessness to launching the city's new zoning code, transportation, environmental sustainability, and the city's budget. And I want to use my experience to bring people together to get results for Northwest Denver, because I believe that when we work together, we build a brighter future for all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And next, David Cebedos.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David Cebedos. I'm a small business owner, and I'm proud to have worked in policy at the local, state, and federal levels. I don't need to tell any of you the same challenges that our city is facing. Housing hasn't kept up with growth. Transportation hasn't kept up with density. And wages certainly haven't kept up with the cost of living. I'm proud to have tackled tough issues throughout my career, from healthcare access, criminal justice reform, neighborhood schools, and Denver's new campaign finance law. From this experience, I know that we need a city council member who can work collaboratively with colleagues to address these issues, from expanding housing options like accessory dwelling units, duplex construction that can meet our housing needs while maintaining the integrity of our communities, expanding out bus and other transportation services, yes, including scooters, and otherwise bringing new innovative ideas to council. I'm proud to have the support of North Denver leaders like Senators Lucia Guzman, Irene Aguilar, over a dozen other current and former elected officials. Thank you. I'd be honored to have your vote.
Thank you. And now let's hear from Michael Soma.
Good evening. I'm Michael Soma. I'm running for City Council District 1. I was born and raised in North Denver and lived here my whole life. I'm running for City Council because we need a true leader representing you at City Hall. I'm not a politician. I've never worked for a politician. That's just not who I am. I've been a public servant for the city and county of Denver for 34 years. I've been a Denver firefighter since 1992, currently serving as a lieutenant at Station 17 at 45th and Tennyson, proudly serving and protecting the citizens of Northwest Denver. I have laid my life on the line for this community because this is my community too. And I want to continue serving our community from the firehouse to City Hall. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. And now with her opening statement is Amanda Sandoval.
Hello, and welcome to Northwest Denver. We're glad to have hosting here. I am a lifelong resident of Northwest Denver, a graduate of North High School, and I earned my degree at Metropolitan State University. I am the most qualified candidate to represent you as your next City Council member. Currently, I work for the Denver Fire Department as their legislative liaison and outreach manager. They trust I get their legislation through the City Council process. Previously, I had the honor of working for 2 City Council members who provided me with the skills and training necessary to get the job done. My vision is one of reflective representation, creating an environment where the community is engaged in the decision-making process, utilizing my land use expertise to preserve Northwest Denver's unique character while creating attainable housing options. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, yes, Scott Allen Durrell.
Thank you to the host for tonight's forum. Everyone, my name is Scott Durrell, and I want to represent Northwest Denver as your next City Council member for District 1. I have been raised by 2 strong women, my mother and my grandmother, who taught me the importance of hard work, entrepreneurship, and taking care of those less fortunate than you. I served my country as a United States Marine, where I learned the true meaning of leadership. My wife and I bought our home in Northwest Denver in 2006. I have opened 5 businesses in this district, creating 150 jobs in Northwest Denver. I have managed properties, projects, construction projects from coast to coast, such as Boston, Los Angeles, and have seen the growth impact of rapid development and how it affects our communities. Being a small business owner in Denver has given me the opportunity to work with many of the city agencies and departments. I am the only candidate running that has created a 4-year plan for the district. We need a City Council member with diverse business experience and one who thinks outside of the box. I will be that person and pledge that I will fight for our district every moment from the day you elect me to office. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, candidates. Now moving on to our questions. Our first questions for the candidates, and each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. We'll start in reverse order of the opening statements. So, Scott, we will start with you. And the first question is, have you received money from developers or special interest groups? And please explain your answer.
I have not received any money from any developers or special interest groups. My money has come from those people who know me well, and those people who work with me, and those people who believe in me. I believe that that's the key thing, et cetera, especially going through the development section here. We should not be aligned with any developers in the concerns that we have with development. So I would tell you that that's not something that I do accept.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yes, so I have accepted money from developers. During my time at City Council, for the 6.5 years that I served, I negotiated 13 out of 23 rezonings in the last 3 years. So they know I'm a proven leader, they know I can negotiate, they know I'm reasonable, and they know that when it comes to making really tough decisions on land use, that I have their best interest and the best interest of Northwest Denver and the next 7 generations at the table. So I am not afraid of development. I want smart growth in our neighborhood, and property rights are important, and developers own that property. And so I'm proud and honored to have the support of people who are building the housing stock and who are building the developments and the retail that will serve our next 7 generations of Denverites. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
No, I have not received any money from any developer. As I stated in my opening statement, I am a lifetime resident of North Denver. When you elect me for City Council, we're going to bring North Denver the way it should be, back to the people, not run by developers. This is our property, and we have the right to develop however we care to, but I do not believe accepting money from developers is a good start to running a City Council office. Thank you.
I believe I've probably accepted 2 contributions from developers, 2 gentlemen I met who are both very focused on how we can be creating the sort of attainable housing that our district needs. The majority of my contributions to my campaign, I'm proud to say, are coming from $25, $50, $100 donors. In fact, last time I checked, I have more individual contributions and the lowest average contribution of anyone up here at this table. And I think it's important to be looking at which campaigns are being funded through grassroots. You know, I was proud to work on Amendment 2E, or sorry, Referred Measure 2E last fall, negotiating a deal with City Council and ultimately putting it to the voters to create a public financing system for our city. Ultimately, a public financing system like the ones that you all approved with over 70% of the vote is the only way to ensure that influence is returned back to the people instead of special interests. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sabrina?
No, I'm very happy to say that we are running a very grassroots campaign. Like David, I think maybe after our March financials come out, we might be tied for the most small individual contributions. I'm being supported by neighbors and colleagues in Northwest Denver who have worked with me, and they've seen my experience and how I work collaboratively with people to find solutions to complex problems. And we're very happy to be taking those small $20 and $50 donations and running our campaign that way.
Victoria?
No, we definitely have not received any contributions from any developers. We have not received any contributions from any special interests. As somebody who is a working class individual, definitely raising money has been challenging in this race. However, it has not stopped us from moving forward in our vision to make sure that we are powered by people and not by special interests. And although it's challenging to not, accept money or contributions from special interests, it's definitely more meaningful when you have somebody who believes in your vision, who is contributing from the hard work that they've earned, their money that's hard-earned, and that believe in your vision and that know the work that you've done and know that there's substance behind the words that you're saying when you're out in the community. So the answer is no, I have not.
Thank you.
I think I've received exactly 1 donation from a developer for $25. He's a personal friend. I do think, however, that all parts of our housing infrastructure, the citizens, the community groups, the regional neighborhood organizations, and developers have to be at the table to work collaboratively to solve this housing issue.
All right, thank you. So we're going to go with our next round of questions, and Amanda, we'll start with you and work our way down. Everybody gets a chance to answer the question first. The next question is District 1 willing to host or develop a unique commercial district which could allow a big box store in the district to keep sales revenues within city limits?
So I would say the answer is no. District 1 already fought that battle at the old Elitch's site. They wanted to bring in Walmart when we were redeveloping Northwest Denver and the Elitch's, and the residents were adamant at saying no. And currently, there's not any land use big enough to host a big box redevelopment. We subsidized as the city for Target to go down on the 16th Street Mall. We have a Target not far off of off of Sheridan. So no, Northwest Denver does not need big box development, and our residents have already proved with the redevelopment of Elitch's, we will not have big box development in Northwest Denver. Thank you.
Right, next, Michael.
No, there's no plans for a big box, and my vision is to bring back the neighborhood people that built North Denver, small businesses. If we go down if we go down Tennyson, we see those there. When I grew up, it used to be on Tejon Street, for those of little gray hair that I have at this mic. We remember those mom and pop stores, and that's what my vision is to bring back to the North Denver area, not big box stores. We've already ran them out to across the street into a different county, and they could stay there. Thank you.
Like the other two so far, I don't believe there's an appropriate place in Northwest Denver. There is no current infill project that could handle another Target, Walmart type option. We also were fortunate to not have the food desert problems that some other parts of the city have. You know, currently we have grocery stores that are within walking or at least biking distance for the majority of folks. And ultimately, you know, I think North Denver, one of the things that makes us really wonderful is all the small businesses that we have on Tennyson, on 38th, 44th. I live around the corner from several great restaurants, very popular brunch places. It's hard to find parking on a Sunday morning. But you know, the fact that those are always so busy shows that people love the small businesses in our community instead.
Thank you. Sabrina?
Yeah, I have to agree with what everybody else has said. I think big box development is just entirely inconsistent with the neighborhood character that we all love about Northwest Denver. We love our small independent businesses and being able to walk to, as David said, a local restaurant and enjoy that and support our small independent local businesses. So I just think it's inconsistent with what our neighborhood wants, and I agree that we don't really have the land use space anywhere available, and that our public and our community has made their voices clear that we didn't want that in recent years. So I don't think it's something that we need to consider.
Thank you.
I would agree with everybody that we do not need any big box development here in our district. Mostly because we know that small businesses are the lifeline of our communities. And me personally, when I talk about investing into our community members, this is what I mean, making sure that businesses are small, making sure that we're investing into people who have invested their time into this very community. And so I think that a way to mitigate some of the inequalities that we've seen in our economy is investing back into our neighborhoods. Big box development is not consistent with investing into our neighborhoods, especially in North Denver. We know that we have some of the oldest mom and pop shops that we're very proud of having, and big box development is definitely something that I wouldn't like to see in our neighborhood, and I think that neither of you guys would see. So, yeah.
Thank you. Prash.
Unsurprisingly, I will agree with everyone else on the panel. I think another thing we need to consider is oftentimes when cities attract big box retail, they sacrifice the types of other incentives that can be used to cultivate homegrown local businesses. And so it's not just that Northwest Denver doesn't want big box retail or there is no space, is that that's energy and time and effort and money that should be devoted and towards our own retail, which can happen, as we've seen. Northwest Denver has several flourishing districts of local businesses, and we need more of them, not less. There's, as Amanda said, if you want to go to Walmart or Target, there are places in the city, many of them. We need Northwest Denver to be focused on building local small businesses.
Thank you. Scott.
I have to agree. I am a small business owner. I've been a small business owner most of my life. And as I said, I've had 5 small businesses in the district. I am against big box businesses because one of the things it does, it takes away from our small businesses. What we do love in this district is the fact that we have these unique businesses in certain areas that really attract. It's what the heart and soul is of Northwest Denver. And I think what we need to do is build off of that. We need to keep the diversity of businesses, because that's another reason why we live here. We love the choice. By bringing a big box business as well, it's going to put some of these smaller businesses out of business, and that is the concern that I have. We need to start creating jobs, and we got to realize as well that a lot of these small business owners like myself, we live in this district, and we have to strengthen that. Part of our 4-year plan that you'll see on my website addresses that concern, is how to retain small businesses, how to make them more involved with the community, and make them a stakeholder in some of these developments that we're talking about. So we need to support our small businesses, because that is what makes us special, is the amount of small diversity business we have in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next round of questions, and we'll start with Michael Soma this time around. Next question is, do you think the developers are including the existing character of the neighborhood in the new buildings, and especially residences in Northwest Denver? And do you like what you're seeing? Do you think the developers are including the existing character of the neighborhood in the new buildings, and especially residences in Northwest Denver, and do you like what you're seeing?
No, I do not. Being here for 6 decades, I've seen the changes. Change comes day in and day out. But I just received an article earlier about Larimer Square commits to no demolition on historic buildings. Scott talked about stakeholders. What I have seen in this district is people coming in and the stakeholders not at the table. We're an afterthought. We, being in this community, have been an afterthought. So I want to keep the characters of the house that are there. I'm not against remodeling them or upgrading them, but let's keep the character of North Denver, North Denver. There was a lot of style here, and I understand people want to have different styles of houses, but at least build it to the character that fits in that neighborhood. So thank you.
Thanks.
I saw the stop sign come up.
I think it's certainly a mix, ultimately. And, a broad statement of, all development is outside the character, or none of the development is outside the character, just doesn't make sense. And ultimately, we have developers who are working to be building housing that does keep within the character of the community. We have developers working to expand options, as I brought up, such as accessory dwelling units and duplexes that can keep the same sort of street-facing appeal while providing additional housing throughout that property. And ultimately, we also recognize that tastes change over time. And as people have determined what they want to be purchasing or what they want to be renting, that's ultimately driving a lot of the development going on. Certainly there are homes that I think are beautiful that are new. There are homes that are new that I personally would not choose to live in, but someone else made that decision for themselves.
All right, thank you. Sabrina.
Sure. I moved to Northwest Denver in large part because I loved the historic architecture that we have in our part of the city, and I own an 1890 Victorian, and so I obviously personally love the older architecture, but I do think that it's really important for us to understand that part of and I guess I will say, I think we have some architects and developers who do a fantastic job. I've seen some Tudors that have been popped that look amazing. There are some renovations and restorations that have been fantastic. I do think, however, as David said, tastes change, and I think it is an enormous part of our affordability issue that we build density in the city, because we cannot solve the affordability issue without more housing units. And so What I struggle with is that I think we've seen some of our neighborhoods where we've seen the most development and the most density go in really completely destroy the entire neighborhoods and without a lot of public involvement. And so I am concerned, but I feel like we have,
Thank you.
I would say that it definitely has to be a balance of development in our communities. As someone who was born and raised and grew up in this neighborhood, when I see homes being knocked down that have the potential to maybe be restored, there's an emotional attachment to some of those homes and some of those land spaces that made Northwest Denver and continue to make it a great place to live in. But I would say that as a city and as community members, it's important for us to remember that it's better to invest in things than just to replace things. And if we are going to replace buildings, we need to make sure that we have spaces that we can still come together and celebrate as a community and remember, and the legacies and the old buildings are not just old buildings for some of us, they're memories. And so if we're replacing them, we also need to make sure that we have a space for us to celebrate the history and educate people on the history of the buildings that are here.
Thank you. Prash?
So I would say to a certain degree, some developers are respecting the existing character, and some are, some aren't. So I've worked with the Sunnyside Regional Neighborhood Organization, RNO, to help cultivate design and aesthetic standards so that new development over time will try to conform to a certain degree with the existing character. However, I do think we have to be careful with those sorts of standards. If they're too restrictive and there are too many restrictions, as some other people have said, you ultimately will drive up costs and take away from what some people legitimately want. So I think there's a careful balance to be met, and some developers genuinely care about meeting with this aesthetic, and as long as we're reasonable with that, that is something we should welcome in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Scott?
I have to agree. I think there is a balance between the two. One of the things we have to remember is that our neighborhood and our city is growing, and we have to make sure that we control that growth. I think a lot of it, as well as what we're all saying here, is that we want to make sure that these developments are actually matching the communities that they're in. It's retaining the value, the property value that we so much love about our district. And in 3 or 4 years, not to see that property value go down because of some of these developments that I think we all know what we're talking about. So we have to have a balance. But more importantly, what we're trying to do here is we need to create so that the community that we're living in our neighborhoods have more of a stakeholder, more of a say with these developers. We need to find responsible developers who are going to work with us, understand the character of our neighborhood, but it happens with us as a community. So we have to build the voice of the community to make sure that we want these certain developments in our area. And I will be that city council member to work with the communities and the RNOs to make sure that their voices is heard. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So I like some of the new infill development. I just taste some of the other new infill development. It's not my taste. But I will say this, that I personally have worked on a city council overlay in Potter Highland to help infill development be more predictable in that neighborhood. I like some of the redevelopment of the Aljabel Shrine. Some of them are single-family homes, and they fit into the character of the neighborhood. I like the adaptive reuse of the church on 32nd and Lowell that the neighborhood fought for, and I like the brick on the building. So I want to maintain our original Denver neighborhoods with contextual, respectful architecture, and the only way that you can do that is through overlays, and I've personally worked on 3 that got passed in 2015, and I'm personally working on 2 others in my free time, besides running for city council, besides being a mom and a mother. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Another question from our audience for the City Council District 1 candidates, and we're going to begin with you, David. Again, everyone, you've got 1 minute to answer the question, and the question is, please describe what you see as the detriments and or benefits of the rapid population growth and construction growth in many Denver neighborhoods.
I'm sorry, would you read that one more time?
Of course.
Thank you.
Please describe what you see as the detriments and or benefits of the rapid population growth and construction growth in many Denver neighborhoods.
Thank you. Certainly North Denver is seeing even more rapid growth in many other parts of the cities. And certainly there are pros and cons. As our city has grown, our economy has strengthened, our economy has grown. We've brought in new people with new ideas, new small businesses, and that's all been a lot of positive change on balance. With that, of course, comes the challenges of having enough housing. Denver is, by best estimates, probably about 50,000 units short of where we need to be on housing right now. And at the same time, that kind of rapid growth, we haven't had the transportation system to be keeping up with the influx of people as well. And the city has not done the sort of investment that's needed in the infrastructure for either housing or for transportation. Ultimately, as housing prices have skyrocketed, more folks have gotten pushed out. And it's one of the reasons that we also need to be increasing the minimum wage and ensuring worker protections so everyone can afford to live here. Thank you.
Next, Sabrina.
Yeah, I think that the rapid rate of growth in our community has meant that we obviously don't have housing to meet the need, as David said, and the growth in Northwest Denver has been absolutely disproportionate. If you look across the city, the neighborhoods who have been most affected are those in closest proximity to downtown. And I think that the rapid growth has caused a lot of our neighborhoods to feel very blindsided. I think that there were rapid changes that people were not expecting, didn't understand, didn't feel they had a voice in. And so I feel it's really important that we create processes that our neighbors can be involved in, have a voice in the planning processes in their neighborhood. And we also need to be working to get more investment in our infrastructure, sidewalks, bike lanes, parking, to make sure that we are getting that weighted toward the communities that have seen the most growth, because that's being spread more evenly throughout the city right now.
Okay, thank you.
I would definitely have to say the population growth, particularly in our district, there's been some pros. I love going down the street and being able to have a slice of Chicago pizza, right? It's brought some diversity to our neighborhood that wasn't there previously. When I went to school at North High School, it was not a safe neighborhood. I lost several classmates to gang violence, and I don't think that that's where we need to go back to. I believe that somehow the growth has been positive for our communities, but that there has to be a balance. I also don't think that our growth is at a place where somebody goes to Sprouts and might be discriminated against by the accent that they have. So growth has definitely brought some diversity to our neighborhoods, but I think that we need to be responsible with our growth and make sure that as we're growing, we're also educating community members on our district and who we are and the values that we hold as a district.
Thank you. Praj?
So in terms of benefits, obviously a growing economy in many ways helps our city, increases the tax base, which provides more funds available for services for all of us. The diversity which other people have hit on, the types of businesses, the types of restaurants, and so on. In terms of the detriments, there are some concrete issues like housing, like transportation, which we have to improve as we grow. But there's also the more aesthetic feeling that people, a large segment of our population feels that they're being left out and not part of the growth. So I would say that's a big detriment that isn't hit on, that many of our fellow citizens don't feel that we're growing, they are being left behind. And so I would also ask us about the type of growth. If our growth is primarily in tech and finance and these very high-income jobs, what are we doing as a city to ensure that the more middle and low-income jobs are also growing along with it, so it can be growth across all income and educational sectors?
Thank you. Scott?
I have to agree. I think the growth is good and bad. I think the positive part of growth is it has brought a lot more tax dollars and business to our businesses in our district. I think is very important. But also we have to remember as well, as when bringing in this growth, there's different type of growth that's coming in. We have renters coming in. We now have Airbnbs. We have all these other entities that are now part of our communities. And I think what we've lost is getting them involved in the community. So I think we have to get involved with bringing more people together to be involved with the communities. We should have this room filled. I would also have to say that with growth comes transportation issues, parking issues. We have in my 4-year plan, we have a thing called, we call it flex transportation, where we want to look at using some of our major boulevards to be accessible to other forms of transportation, whether they're scooters, whether it's electric vehicles, and also for bikes. So we open up our main boulevards to be able to bring an easier way of getting through our district. And I also believe that with growth comes responsibility. And that responsibility is making sure that we all understand
Thank you.
that we're all part of Northwest Denver. Thank you.
Amanda.
So I think with the rapid growth, it obviously means Denver's a wonderful place to live. It's a wonderful place to want to raise your family. It's a wonderful place to want to spend your time. And as a long life resident of Northwest Denver who's raising my family here, I've not wanted to leave. But with that, also, we've had impacts on our right-of-way. We've had a built environment that does not match the fabric of our neighborhood. We've had our roads closed. We've had sidewalks closed. But also, we've brought transit-oriented development. And so we're able to do all of that. But the biggest issue is we've had displacement of residents who I've known my entire life who are not able to live here in Northwest Denver anymore. And that's a concern, and that is something I would absolutely address when I am elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Growth has been good, and as everyone else has stated, good and bad. The good part of it is we welcome to our neighborhood. What I want to do is bring it like it was, neighbors that know neighbors. I see a lot of people coming into this neighborhood, and they're not part of the community. They just float around. So what I would like to see is the growth come in here, but I want the stakeholders to be involved. And also the transportation comes in on this part of growth. For what I have come up with is a plan called electric streetcar systems. For 78 years, that's what got people around the city and county of Denver. This would also help our transportational needs, use the boulevards that are impacted right now, and get people back into our communities for small businesses to thrive. So that's the good points about it and the bad points about it.
All right, thank you. Our next round of questions, and we'll start with Sabrina. Again, everyone, we've got 1 minute for your answer. The next question is, will you vote for or against Initiated Ordinance 300, also known as the Right to Survive? And please explain why or why not. And Sabrina, with you.
This is a tough question for me because I was intermittently homeless as a teenager. So I've experienced that, and I have worked most of my life with serving the homeless community and people who are going through that every day. However, and I will say I am absolutely adamantly against Denver's current camping ban that the city council passed. I think it's a horrible affront to human rights. I think it's terrible that people can't cover themselves with blankets to stay warm, and that we treat people with such disrespect. However, I think that 300 is the wrong solution, and I'm about finding the right solution to the problems. 300 does not solve homelessness for us in any way, and I think it has some unintended consequences that actually put homeless people in more danger than they already are. So as much as I would like to see the camping ban overturned and would do that as if I was elected to city council, I don't think 300 works. I think it puts people in our rights of way in a dangerous position.
Thank you. Victoria?
I would have to say, as somebody who works day in and day out with our unhoused populations for the past 10 years, sitting in our lobby and working in shelters with folks who are unhoused, I think that there's better solutions to this issue. They include making sure that people in our shelter are therapists, that they're mental health services, that they're services for people who have substance abuse issues. I think that definitely we want to make sure that we're all a safe city, but that doesn't mean compromising other people's safety. And so I would also work to repeal the camping ban, but work on a solution that doesn't compromise other people's safety.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is an issue I also care about. I've worked with the Severe Weather Shelter Network, and I've many times in my life slept within 50 feet of the homeless for a night. So they need to be treated with compassion and dignity. But like others on this panel, I don't think Right to Survive is the proper approach to this problem. I would like us to take some more intermediate steps. For example, use large parking lots to provide more bathrooms and showers for the homeless. Connect them to the job market. If you speak to them and get to know some of them, as I have, yes, there are some people who may not be able to work, but there are many people who are just down on their luck and are very functional in many other ways, and they can be connected to the job market. And there are some cities in America who have done a great job with this through nonprofits, through the city government. I'm thinking of Dallas and San Antonio in particular, who have done great jobs in helping provide services for the homeless. So I would vote no on this particular ballot measure because I think it goes too far and incentivizes some outcomes we don't want, but there are more effective ways to solve the problem.
Thank you. Scott.
I believe that the city has done a terrible job in terms of our homelessness, and it's just getting worse. I have to agree that 300 is not a solution, it's a Band-Aid, and we need a solution. It's very important that we look at the homeless as friends, neighbors, and family members, and we have to address them as such. Most of them can get back into the workplace. We need to get them back into society. We need more for affordable housing. We need to give them jobs, and not just jobs that's going to allow them just to get by, but jobs that are going to allow them to grow like all of us. So we have to take a bigger responsibility in looking at our homeless as they are our friends, they are our brothers, they are our sisters, and treat them like the human beings that they respect. But 300 is not an answer. So I think the city needs to do more and create a policy that is a solution, not just a Band-Aid.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yes, so I would like to see more initiatives like the Denver Social Impact Bond that was passed several years ago. It provides housing first with wraparound services for the people who are experiencing homelessness are crucial users. So we passed this initiative 2 years ago, and I read the report that came out in November, and it's 84% successful. Let me remind you, 84% successful of our most critical homeless users in Denver. So as this council aide, I worked on the outdoor courtyard. That was part of the solution, but it's unintended consequences of 300 that will not allow me to support it. I want to be able to make sure our parks and everywhere else are safe for all people to use, and it's not the homeless who I'm afraid of. They're great. It's usually the people who prey on the homeless that are usually the people who we have to call 911 and we're dealing with. And so I would like to come up with better solutions. Thank you.
Thanks.
Homeless Denverites are still Denverites. We must take action to house our homeless neighbors. Initiative 300 is not the answer. Many studies have shown that housing the homeless is more effective than affordable than leaving them out on the streets. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. San Antonio has a program that virtually eliminated homelessness. Private partnerships on a 22-acre facility, campus, 30 agencies, food, job training, childcare, education. They have successfully transitioned thousands of people in permanent housing and have another 5,000 people in temporary housing. I don't believe that we should arrest people for sleeping outside, but I believe we should be bold enough to take real action.
All right, thank you. David?
About a year ago, my fiance and I were in a bad situation with the landlord and had to move very quickly. And we tried calling the city for help. In fact, we tried calling our council member repeatedly, and neither him nor his staff ever bothered to call us back. And we're not wealthy people, but if we didn't have family in the area that we could have stayed with while we were transitioning houses, we could have ended up homeless ourselves. I understand the plight so many families find themselves in. At the end of the day, 300 isn't an answer to those problems. 300 says that folks can, right now in the city of Denver, we had almost 200 people die on the streets last year. All 300 will do is say they can legally die on the streets. We need wraparound services. We need mental health services. We need to expand Denver Day Works. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are on round 6 for our questions for the candidates, and we'll begin with Victoria Aguilar. You'll be the first one to answer. And the question is, Exactly what does it mean to you to represent District 1 on City Council, and why are you the best person for the job?
What it means to me to represent District 1 is definitely representing the best interests of the people and having the people's voice on City Council. And when I make decisions, they're based on my nephews and my people that I grew up with, and making it based off of people and not off of profit. It means that the experience that I have working at Human Services and the experience that I have working with Denver's most marginalized populations and growing up in this neighborhood, it means taking courageous and bold steps against politicians and our current city leadership who is not making decisions based off of the needs of our people and not in the best interest of our people. Representing District 1 in City Council for me is being passionate about investing back into the community, something that I've always done, that's part of my DNA. It would mean making sure that all of our voices are on City Council, not just those of special interest or the wealthy. It would be a balance and co-governing with all of you here today.
Thank you. Praj?
Yes. I care about serving this community, this city that I've grown to love. I want to represent everyone and help us manage our growth to make sure all interests are represented. In terms of why I'm the best candidate for this job, I have a truly diverse set of experiences. I'm a scientist, so I have a lot of experience in academia. I've worked in the federal government for 2 years. As a foster parent, I work very closely with a local Denver agency, so I know how city government works. And I also have worked in the private sector for the past several years. So I have a diverse set of experiences that will help me to recognize that as Denver grows with all different types of jobs coming in, we still have a city bureaucracy and we have to work with state and federal levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott?
I have been a small business owner, like I said, in this district for over 12 years now. I've actually also worked with the Public Works Department in my neighborhood, and I live in the lower part of Highlands, where our city council member did not help us out, where we had to actually contact Public Works, came to my house, came to our neighborhood. We opened up sidewalks. We opened up the streets. We found out that the developer did not pull permits for the last 6 months. So I've been fighting this battle in my neighborhood, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I actually feel that as well, with the diverse experience I have from owning small businesses to working with construction companies and actually working with the city in the zoning and the building department, that I can lead this district with my leadership skills and the ability to be able to build communities, be able to build coalitions with City Hall, with our mayor's office. We have been shut out because of the lack of communication from our district. We now need to have someone who can go in there who doesn't have any ties to the past and can go in there and create these new bridges with our government, with our mayor, and build those coalitions that's going to help our district.
Thank you. Amanda?
Yeah. So I think it's really exciting to think about working on policies. That's what you do as a legislature. You are able to allocate budgets. You're able to advocate for art projects. You're able to advocate for new playgrounds. You're able to advocate for holiday parking moratoriums that I personally worked on to ensure that small businesses aren't impacted by street closures during the holidays. You're able to advocate on zoning. You're able to negotiate on zoning. You're able to work on historic preservation. You're able to work for the next generation of Denver. And so the reason why I'm the best candidate is I have worked on these solutions. My family's owned a small business in Denver since 1975. We have made it. So I understand the ups and downs of what it takes to be a city council person. And I love Northwest Denver with everything that I am. And it would truly be the biggest honor in my life to be able to represent all of you on Denver City Council. Thank you.
Thanks. Michael?
Being born and raised in North Denver, this is all I know, but what I've seen is change. My father was a small business owner on 40th and Tejon. Back in the days when that was all business area, that's changed. I was a small business owner. I was pushed out because of change in the neighborhood also. For 34 years of my life, I have committed to being a public servant. When the bell rings, I do not turn away or back down. We move forward. And that's what I'm going to do as your next councilman, is continue to move forward. Not for one with the most money, the one that has the most businesses in town, the one that's related to politics in town, but about all of us, each and every one of us that are constituents of this neighborhood we call North Denver, and proud to be here.
Thank you. David?
Representation means being able to represent everyone in the community, from those experiencing homelessness that we just talked about, to the young family moving into the neighborhood, to the family who's lived here a long time and is concerned about historic preservation. We need a representative who can actually work collaboratively and work at multiple levels of government to be able to advocate for Denver. Denver City Council job doesn't stop just Monday nights when they go home. In order to be doing many of the things that we're discussing here today, we need enabling legislation from the state in some ways. We need to make sure that we're securing federal dollars in some ways. And I'm proud to have worked at policy at the city level and at higher levels of government so that we can have that sort of relationship. Representation matters in making sure that our city council looks like our city. I realized I would actually be the only renter on Denver City Council. My fiance and I have struggled to buy a home in this community like many others. And at a time where half of the city is renters and struggling to buy, that representation matters. Thank you.
What it means to me to represent District 1 is to represent all of us. I think that the change we've experienced as a community has isolated people, and for me, quality of life is about our connections with one another, and I want to work to bring people together, to solve complex problems, and to find the places where we have commonality and build on them. To me, that means advocating for smart growth that includes our residents' voices and addresses affordability. It means advocating for a strong economy with quality jobs and living wages, and to support our small businesses that are the heart of our community's character. It also means creating safe, healthy, and welcoming communities, and that includes everyone, whether you have been here for generations or for just a few weeks, whether you rent or you own, whether you have kids in our schools or you just love our location. I want to represent all of Northwest Denver, and I believe that I am the best candidate to do that because I have 20 years of experience in public service, writing and analyzing policy.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the final round of submitted questions for our candidates, and we will start with Praj. You'll be the first one to answer, and then we'll start back down here with Scott. So the question is, what or who are the major sources of funding for your campaign?
Mostly friends and family. In fact, entirely friends and family. I've reached out, groveled, asked, pleaded, offered to do dishes, babysit. So,
Great.
and I said, I have one contribution from a developer for a small amount, but I know him as a friend.
Thank you. Scott.
My donations have been very diverse. I am the first African American who was licensed in the United States to own a cannabis company. My wife has worked on Amendment 64. I have worked with children, I have worked with parents, I have worked with athletes, I have worked with everyone from ailments from cancer on through. So the cannabis industry has been a part of my base. I've also have reached out to many of my friends and others throughout Denver and throughout Colorado and outside the state as well who believe in my leadership skills, as well as many people in my neighborhood and in the district. Because I'm from a diverse background, I'm half Italian from Boston, I always reach out to make sure that my base, the people around me, represent those people in Denver. And I'm a very diverse group. Our businesses are diverse, and so are my investments. So are my donations. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's really important. So I'm proud to say that the major source of my funding are from the residents of District 1. I think I'm the only candidate who has most of her funding from the residents within Council District 1. And that's a proud day for me to think. When I look at my campaign finance reports and I see streets that I grew up on, that I see streets that I take my kids to, that I see residents who are supporting me in this effort of a grassroots campaign, it makes me proud. So yeah, the majority of my council, of my money has come from you, the people of District 1. Thank you.
My money has come from my brothers and sisters in the union. I've been a proud union member since 1985. Unions have built America, from electricians to plumbers to concrete people. That's who's built America and has kept us strong. The rest of my campaign funding, as everybody else on this board has said, has come from borrowing, begging, used to be my friends, and my family members.
All right, David.
Yeah, I think like everyone else up here, my friends have stopped taking my phone calls for the most part. I've actually started just texting, like, I'm not asking for money. I actually have another question. I found I get more responses back. I'm proud to have my contributions coming from District 1 residents, from Denver residents, and from grassroots contributions. My friends don't write $1,000 checks for the most part. I've been fortunate to have, I think, 3 individuals who've been able to. My social network, unlike some other folks up here, are folks who are more working class and are able to give $25, $50, and $100 at a time. And I'm proud to say we're raising competitive funds through that sort of grassroots contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. Sabrina.
Yeah, as I said before, we're really proud of the fact that we're running a grassroots campaign that's entirely funded by small individual contributions and small businesses, primarily in District 1. They are friends, family, colleagues, and neighbors who have worked with me in our schools, in our community, have seen my experience in public service, how I work collaboratively to bring people together, and that we get results and get things done for our neighborhoods. And I think my biggest donor has been my mother, who grew up here and is a huge fan, and that's pretty much it.
Victoria.
I would say for us, definitely grassroots, and it feels like that term gets thrown around here so freely. So if you all are grassroots, I'm just roots, then Roots Campaign, because most of my contributions have definitely come from people that I've worked with, people that have seen the the investments that I've made in my own community. We're trying to be very creative and engaging voters as part of this fundraising process. As a working class candidate, it's been very hard to fundraise, but also, like I said before, it hasn't stopped us from getting our message out because we have people who support our vision and believe in the work that we've done. Something that we've been doing creatively is hosting events that are true and authentic to who I am, like bingo, Mexican bingo, because I firmly believe that if people are investing in me, I want to give them something in return, whether that's entertainment, whether that's, a night of playing bingo or eating pizza at our local pizza place. We've been really creative because we are such a roots campaign. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So now we're going to do something really fun called the lightning round, in which our candidates will be asked to answer several quick questions with a simple yes, no, or pass. And only yes, no, or pass. No expanding, no explaining. We'll return to the ballot order and begin with Mr. Kulkarni and go right all the way down to the end of the table to Mr. Dura. And remember, you can only answer with yes, no, or pass. First question. Do you support the Turnover a New Leaf program, which is a new effort to expunge low-level marijuana convictions that occurred in Denver before recreational marijuana was legalized in Colorado?
Yes.
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 Oh, yes.
Okay, well done. Next question, and we'll just keep starting with you, Posh. Have you ridden or used a rental scooter or bike for business or fun in the last 6 months?
No.
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 Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Next question. In the last 30 days, have you used mass transit, a bike, or walked for business purposes or to get to work?
No.
Yes.
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 Oh, yes.
Have you attended your neighborhood association meeting in the last 6 months?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
No.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Do you own season tickets for any of the Denver major sports teams?
No.
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 I wish. No.
My follow-up question was, can I join you? Next question. Was the salary and benefit package that comes with the job of being on City Council a factor in your deciding to run for office?
No.
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 Yes.
No.
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 In the 5 years since it was legalized, have you personally tried any of the various products offered by recreational marijuana stores?
No.
Never.
No.
Yes.
No.
No.
That's a trick question. Yes.
All righty then. Do you support Initiative 300, the Right to Survive initiative?
No.
Pass.
No.
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 Pass.
No.
Should Denver expand its use of photo red light enforcement?
Pass.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 Have you ever missed the opportunity to vote in a local, regional, or national election?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Missed an opportunity? I was disenfranchised from voting once, but otherwise, no.
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 Last question. Have you ever attended the National Western Stock Show?
Yes.
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 All right. Nice job. Now for this round, it's going to be the candidate's turn to ask questions, not of me, but of to each other. Each of you will select one of your opponents and ask them a question, and hopefully they'll have an answer for you. We will go in the ballot order again. So, Mr. Kulkarni, you may ask one of your opponents a question, and if you are selected to answer that question, your time allotment is 1 minute.
Scott, as the only marijuana entrepreneur running, what are your views on the other ballot measure that is on the ballot this May regarding decriminalizing magic mushrooms? And what would you say to the parents who, whatever your stance, what would you say to?
You asked me two questions.
You'll just take
You
one
get
question, yeah.
Okay. I think like the marijuana initiative, we have to allow the general public to actually vote on that. Same thing with cannabis. When you're looking at the benefits and what the program is, you know, it's really about giving alternative choices, and a lot of it is for medical reasons or whatever. We always look at the other, and we went through this with cannabis. We always look at the bad side. We don't look at the medical side. And when you're looking at the medical part of the whole mushroom initiative, there are some things that I think are very positive and options, especially for those who are going through certain illnesses, et cetera. So I always would leave that up to the voters to decide. And in terms of, and I will answer the other question, in terms of parents, I think like everything else, the responsibility is at home first. I was taught to be responsible in terms of anything in my house, whether it's prescription drugs, alcohol, and et cetera. And I think if with the proper, you know, the parents, parenthood, et cetera, I think it needs to be the discussion at home first.
Thank you. Now, Victoria, your opponent.
My question is for Sabrina. My question is, Sabrina, given the unique neighborhoods in our District 1, we have neighborhoods who have a percentage of people that have identified speaking a language other than English. And given that our current council office has not provided language access for some of these residents, what would you do on City Council? What have you done through your campaign to ensure that there's proper language access for all of our residents?
Well, thank you for that question. I think that's such an important thing. Firstly, I grew up in a family that had people who were bilingual, and I sure wish I was. My grandparents both spoke Spanish and English. Also, I think having worked at Denver Public Schools, where 35%, or roughly 33,000 of our children throughout this district speak multiple languages, and English is not their first language at home, I learned that 167 languages are spoken throughout the city, and so part of my job as a policy and communications professional professional with DPS, was to ensure that we were reaching those families and getting them important information. So I have done that. I've worked closely with our translation and interpretations departments, and I understand how important it is to make sure that we're outreaching to those communities and making sure that they have those services available for all of our public meetings, and to make sure that we are reaching them in various different aspects. I'm also proud to say that I have worked really hard to be the only candidate, I believe, on in District 1 who has completely translated my website for those families.
All right, now Sabrina, your turn.
Sure. Mike, several of us have worked for fire departments. I was a public information officer for the Golden Police and Fire Departments, and Amanda currently works for Denver Fire. You have a significant amount of fire department support, including from the unions, and I'm just curious, what would be the one thing that you would like to see our next city council person do to support our firefighters?
Great question. The population's increased. The density of this neighborhood's increased, but our fire staff and our police staff has not increased. When you look at figures from Denver Fire, we have 1,150 sworn officers. When you take into account, when you break them out and put them down in the office and in the bureaus we have 176 firefighters throughout the city and county of Denver on shift per day. Station 17 had a truck company at one time there, and it was taken out. And our forefathers knew way before we did why that truck company was there, because the apparatus I have there now does not reach the new buildings that are in place.
All right, thank you. David, your turn.
Apparently the fire department's a popular background and question today. Mike, though, Amanda, I'd be curious your thoughts as well, as you work there. But Mike, I recently read that less than 5% of Denver's 900-some firefighters are women. A former Denver fire captain was recently awarded $146,000 in her gender discrimination lawsuit against the department. She claims she was terminated in 2015 in retaliation to her complaints about the boys' club atmosphere in the Denver Fire Department. You've been part of this fire department for, I believe, 3 decades, as you said. As a city council member, what would you do to address gender discrimination in the fire department?
Thanks, David. I don't believe it's just in the fire department. If we look at the way city and county hires and the way we go through our programs, I believe what we need to do is start there fresh. The fire department has tried over and over to get female firefighters to come on our job. It is a very strenuous, physically strained job that sometimes I don't even realize what we have to do. To do that as a council person, I would open up our training to make sure we know what candidates we're getting on there, and I would have a program for women to be tutored to try to assist them before they come on our job, to make sure that they know what they're getting into, to try to bring up the women in the fire service.
Thank you. Okay, Michael, your turn.
This question is for David. David, you have held an elected position before in 2017. You campaigned for and were elected the first vice chair of the Colorado Democratic Party. You then quit that job. Can you shed some light on us on why you quit that position and why the voters of District 1 can trust you to fulfill the commitments you are about to make?
Sure. Appreciate that, Mike. No, I'm proud to have been elected. I was actually first served as the chair of the Colorado Young Democrats. I served on for 6 years, bringing more young people into politics. I then was fortunate enough to be elected to the Colorado Democratic Party and served through almost my full term. Ultimately, when I decided to run for office, the state party chair, Maureen Carroll, and I discussed whether or not I should continue on in my current role as vice chair while running for city office. And while we could have stayed on, it was to ensure that Vice Chair of the State Party is an unpaid volunteer position that requires someone who, has that sort of time. And I stayed on until an elected replacement was found to make sure that that position was filled. And ultimately, that was a volunteer opportunity. I had to leave. This is a full-time position and very different.
All right, thank you. Amanda, your turn.
Oh, Victoria. So in the historic preservation ordinance, there's an ordinance where a historic preservation can come on a building where it's not owner initiated. The ugly term is called hostile. The legal term is called non-owner initiated. So if your community brought that forward to you, how would you negotiate that? What would that process look like?
I would definitely think that we always want to be in a position where we're valuing people and that we're helping people. If somebody came up to me and, they had a historic preservation on their home, it would just always be a terrible situation where it would be like a council member against a community member. We don't know the reasons why the community member is struggling to pay their mortgage or why they're selling their home. I would try to find solutions that are definitely balanced in the best interests of both the homeowner and the home, and looking at buildings, and I've said it before, not just as buildings, but that there are people inside of buildings. And so I would definitely, during that process, make sure that I represent the best interest of the person, but also the building in a very balanced and solution-based way.
All right. And Scott, your turn.
Amanda, on the issue of environmental preservation and understanding the new job growth that comes from renewable energy projects, explain your position on fracking in Denver, in Metro Denver, and why you decided not to take the pledge with the Coalition for Local Control.
Yeah, so I decided not to take the pledge for that another candidate was offered to all the other candidates because I want to stay apart from everybody right now. I'm not endorsing anybody, any other candidates, and so I want to make sure that I stand out on alone. So as for fracking, I absolutely do not support fracking within our city limits at all. It's not good for the future of our children, but in terms of environmental sustainability, it's important that we compost, it's important that we recycle, and it's important that we actually produce an ordinance that ensures buildings such as apartment buildings are providing composting and recycling. Thank you.
All right, now it's time for another one-on-one round. And again, opponents, you can ask, or candidates, you can ask an opponent a question, and the answer can only be 1 minute, please. So Praj, we'll start with you again.
Amanda, many economists argue that strong protections for renters decrease housing availability because people stay in apartments longer than they need to. Some of the most expensive cities in the U.S. have strong rent control laws. I believe that you do support rent control. Are you worried that such policies will undermine our shared goal of increasing affordability?
Can you repeat it? Sorry,
Sure.
that was a long question.
Yes, I understand. Sure, briefly, can you please explain your stance on rent control in Denver?
Yeah, so I absolutely would hope that the state legislature right now can overturn the Telluride Amendment, because right now the city and county of Denver cannot have rent control because of the Telluride Amendment currently, and that can only happen at the State House, and that's something that I've been advocating for the past, for a long time since the Telluride Amendment came, and it's something that I asked of our state senator, Julie Gonzalez, and my House District Representative, Serena. So yes, I absolutely support that.
Victoria, your turn.
Praj, my question is, what steps have you taken to ensure that District 1 is a welcoming district for all of our neighbors, and what have you found successful in that process?
Yeah. So what I have tried to do is get involved locally. So for the past year or so, I've been very involved as part of the board of the Sunnyside Regional Neighborhood Organization, RNO. And I think that through their many community events, there's the Sleigh Ride, there's the Chaffee Park Music Festival, and I think getting involved in events like that help foster a sense of community. I've tried to walk around and get to know my neighbors and get to know people in the neighborhood. So when we think about local government, it is in fact smaller than city council. You can get involved even locally, your block and your local RNO, and so that's what I've tried to do.
Okay. Sabrina, your turn to ask a question.
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question, if possible, of both Scott and Amanda. You've both disclosed
No,
that...
just one.
Just...
Those are the
Okay,
rules.
I'll ask it of Amanda. Okay. You and Scott have both disclosed that you have business interests in Denver, including Scott's dispensary and your rental properties and family business, Amanda. When I worked in the mayor's office, Hickenlooper divested all of his business interests to ensure there was no conflict of interest. And so if elected, I'm curious to know what you would do to ensure that there was no real or perceived conflict of interest with any city business, whether that's zoning or contract renewals at DIA or otherwise.
Okay, hello. So La Casita is owned solely by Paula Sandoval. When my father died 6 years ago of pancreatic cancer, he gave the whole entire business over to Paula Sandoval. So I personally, as Amanda Sandoval, have not one penny of business interest in La Casita right now. And as for a rental property, it's not a business. It's a rental property. I own it with my husband and my mother. We all own a third, and we keep our rent low. We could rent it for more, but we don't. We actually rent it for 3/4 underneath market value. So it's not a business. It's a place for people to call home in Northwest Denver, and I'm very proud to have owned that rental property and have someone live in there for 16 years. Thank you.
Okay. David, your turn.
Thank you. Victoria, given all of your work with the city, I was wondering, what is one thing you think council could do to make Denver a more welcoming place to immigrants and refugees?
Most definitely. I think that one of the topics that I touched on is language access. When we talk about making sure that Denver is a safe city and that people have good relationships with police departments. I've worked on several boards and commissions that ensure that our city are safe, that immigrants and refugees are reporting crime, that they have good relationships with the different agencies. I think that language access is a huge piece of this. Making sure that people understand what services are available to them. And it's something that I believe is a role of a council person, is to make sure that the district is welcoming, that it's safe, that people have access to services, that ensure that families are safe, that they're strong, that they're together, and working on integration of immigrants and refugees, making sure that the receiving community understands immigrants and refugees, making sure that there are tools in place like English classes and citizenship classes and programs at Denver libraries that help the integration we know is successful immigrants bring to our economy.
Thank you. Michael, your turn.
Scott, you have been a successful businessman and have brought jobs to our district. Thank you for that. My question for you is, what experience do you have working in the public sector or managing public employees or unions?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, when I was in Massachusetts, I was the horticulture supervisor for the state of Massachusetts, where I got the Governor's Citation Award by Michael Dukakis and Kitty Dukakis. I had a $3 million budget, and I was basically about 21 years old. That ended up turning into a landscape company after that I established. So that would be my experience working with that. And I worked directly with the Governor's office, and reported directly to Kitty Dukakis personally. So that would be my experience in there. In terms of Denver, I've owned 7 businesses in this state, and I've worked very closely with the excise. I've worked very closely with zoning, with building, with the fire department, with every possible agency you can think of with the city. Now let's go up to the state level. I've worked with the Med. We've actually, our dispensary, we actually worked with the Med when they were putting the regulations together in terms of developing an edible company. They work with us. We were the first to have a commercial kitchen, so I've worked with all levels of agencies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amanda, your turn.
Yeah, so this is to Mike Soma. So before starting on your race to city council, how many registered neighborhood organizations have you attended? Were you a participant? Were you ever a board member? And did you ever sit down to negotiate any of the land use issues that were facing your neighborhood?
Go over those one more time.
Yeah, that seems like 3 questions. You want to narrow it down to like one-ish?
So before starting your race for city council, how many times did you join? How many times were you part of your local registered neighborhood organization? And did you serve in any capacity within that local registered neighborhood organization?
Okay. I was a registered with Brahm up at, that goes to the Oriental. Before I become registered to run for this position, and I have never served as any board member on any of these.
All right. Scott, your turn to ask a question.
My turn, okay. Victoria. How do you feel Denver's City Council has failed 2 of our city's most vulnerable populations, those experiencing mental health issues and seniors?
Well, Scott, I think that mental health, as you all may know, is part of something that I'm working to bring access to, because I believe that it's at the very core of some of the issues that we have in our city, making sure that we have programs that are addressing the mental health issues we have in our communities. A lot of us talk about a housing crisis that we have, and we fail to address that there's also a mental health crisis that we're living in Denver at this time. Our jail being the #1 biggest mental health facility in Denver, where we have people who are waiting for mental health services. And although we do have services like co-responders, I think that the current city council has failed our marginalized communities, and that they're not connected to community, that they don't represent the needs of our community well, that they put profit over people, and that's why we're in this situation. That's what I would say.
All right. Thank you. So that ends the Q&A segment, and we'll move on into our closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we will start in the reverse order of the opening statement. So that means, Scott, we will start with you for closing statements.
Oh, you're starting with me, okay. I want to thank the hosts and that all of you for taking your time to listen to us up here. You have heard from the other candidates, and I truly believe that my background in property and construction management, small business ownership, job creation, community development, and working with the city's building departments makes me the most qualified candidate for our district. I am currently building a coalition of community leaders and local professionals to be able to implement my 4-year plan that I want you to check out on my website. I will fight to make sure that the voice of local small businesses and the concerns of the community are heard at City Hall. I will continue to fight for social justice and social equity and ensure that each of us has the opportunity to strive in our great city. I will work with private funding sources to create social scholarships and entrepreneurial opportunities for the youth in our district. So today I'm asking for your vote, your trust to lead Northwest Denver as your next city council member. So remember to vote number 7 on the ballot. That'll be me. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Amanda?
Yeah. Thank you all for taking your time to listen to us. Voting is what I think is my superpower. So with that, I am running for you, the residents of Northwest Denver. I am running for my family and every family that calls Northwest Denver home. I am running for area businesses because a thriving local business is essential to the health of every neighborhood. I am running for our community because Northwest Denver needs a councilperson who not only understands the importance of preserving the past, but has the knowledge to successfully advocate for our future. I am running because I am a wife, a mother, your lifelong neighbor, and a champion resolved to act in the best interest of area residents and businesses as we work together to strengthen our community. And I am running because together we will be the voice of District 1. So please vote May 7th, and please vote for Amanda Sandoval. Thank you.
All right, Michael?
First of all, I'd like to thank Channel 8 for doing this, and our MC of the night, Ms. Banks. Once again, I'm Mike Soma, and I want to serve you on City Council. As a first responder, I have seen between the parts of life that politicians see. I have been in your homes. I've been called in your lives at a moment's notice. Often in the worst circumstances, we have gotten through those circumstances. For the last 34 years, you have trusted me to protect you, your family, your property. Now I hope to protect you at City Hall by being your eyes, ears, and voice. I have never been a politician, but I have always been a Denverite. It's time for a change in District 1, not time for politics as usual. Let's start fresh. Vote Mike Soma, May 7th.
All right, thank you. And David.
Thank you to our wonderful moderator. Thank you to our hosts and to Channel 8 for having this tonight. And for all of you who are still watching after 90 minutes, thank you for truly caring about city government because it is a rare breed. Or maybe you're just an insomniac and this is replaying at 3 in the morning, in which case, stop by Scott's shop tomorrow. He has something for you I think can help. But in all seriousness, we have a serious decision to make here in North Denver about who is best to be leading in the future. And I'm proud of my background of having worked on policy with our city. I may actually be the only one here who's successfully negotiated legislation between a community group, city council, that ultimately resulted in a unanimous vote of city council to place a measure on the ballot that passed the voters. And I'd be proud to take my background to work for you, and I ask for your vote. I'm David Cebedos. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sabrina.
As somebody who's spent my entire career working to engage our community in government, I am thrilled to share this stage tonight with 6 other people who care so deeply about Northwest Denver as I do, and I appreciate the camaraderie we've all had through the campaign. As you've all heard tonight, we share similar concerns and even some of the same policy solutions. However, as you decide who to vote for, I would encourage you to consider how rapidly our city is changing and whether we have the luxury of time to train someone on the job. Consider people's service to our community and their ability to create relationships necessary to get the investments we need in our neighborhoods. If you value experience, if you value collaboration, if you value results, I ask for your vote this spring. And I look forward to having further conversations with all of you and encourage you to reach out to me via my website at sabrinafornwdenver.com. Thank you so much to the sponsors of tonight and to all of you for coming and those watching on Channel 8.
Thank you, all of you, for coming out today. Thank you for all of our supporters who are still watching us. I would say in closing that I would like to challenge each one of you here to dig really deep into the core of who you are and what your values are, what makes you as a person, what makes us as a neighborhood, and who we are as a city, and vote on those values. At the end of the day, whoever wins this race is going to represent me as well. I'm a constituent just like you are, and I never, ever, ever imagined running for city council. It was not in my plans, but I was tired of sitting on the sidelines and watching our communities being displaced, watching all of the irresponsible development that's happening in our neighborhoods, and I took a stand. And I think that city council needs somebody who understands the needs of the community, who's always been involved in the community, and not just because of a campaign, somebody who has substance behind their work and their name and has gotten things done, and I believe that that is me. I believe we need a courageous, bold leader, and I ask for your vote on May 7th. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Praj.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm a foster parent. My wife and I adopted our son through foster care. As a foster parent, you get to know people who are struggling in ways that most of us cannot even imagine. When I think of my adopted city and the city that I've grown to love, I first think of these parents that I've worked with who are struggling to turn their lives around. If our city can't serve them, if we can't ensure that they have housing and jobs, I think we all lose out. I think we all lose out culturally and spiritually if the middle and working class don't feel welcome in our city. I feel like I'm running for the soul of our city. I want to strengthen the character that made so many of us want to move here, myself included. If elected, I'll work to bring back that character and make it stronger. I'll work to ensure that everyone in District 1 enjoys the fruits of our growth. I'll work for all of you. I'm Praj Kulkarni, and I ask for your vote on May 7th. Thank you all for attending and watching tonight.
All right, thank you. Now it's the audience's turn. Let's give these candidates a big round of applause. You can exhale now. You can breathe. Thank you to each and every one of you, and also thanks to the Denver Decides partners, which include the Inter-Neighborhood Cooperation, the League of Women Voters of Denver, and Historic Denver. Denver Decides is presented by Denver 8 TV. We hope we've given you a fair look at each of the candidates vying to represent those of you who are here in District 1 on Denver City Council. For complete election information online, go to denverdecides.com. I'm Tamara Banks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.